Long before the Archons, long before Conria, long before the heavenly principles ruled the skies, someone on Teyvat looked up at the stars and received a message from another civilization. What happened next would create the greatest scientific project in Genshin Impact's history. A project that would span generations, reach the moon itself, and ultimately send a reply back into the universe. Welcome to Quest Archives, I'm Lunatic, and today I'm going to deep dive into the latest world quest in Genshin Impact, and this is the complete story of the Moongazers. Before we ever set foot on the moon, before we learned about Project Moongazer, before we discovered that someone from the moon was living among us, everything began with a mystery named Columbina. At the beginning of Pioneers, the traveler spots Columbina standing alone on the remote island east of Pyramida. At first this seems like a simple encounter. After all, Columbina has already become one of the most mysterious figures in Outcry, but something immediately feels wrong. She doesn't respond, she doesn't acknowledge us, and before we can reach her, she began moving deeper into an isolated region nobody has explored before. Naturally, Paimon assumes she's heading somewhere important, and so, worried that she may be in danger, we follow. What starts as a search for a friend quickly becomes something much bigger, because this isn't just another forgotten ruin. It's our first glimpse into a civilization that once reached the moon. As we travel across the small island, strange clues begin appearing everywhere. The local Kohenki seem to be moving with purpose. Ancient machines lie scattered across the landscape, and eventually we discover a massive underground complex hidden beneath the surface. The moment we enter, the atmosphere changes completely. The architecture doesn't resemble modern Teyvat. The technology doesn't resemble anything we've seen in Outcry, and perhaps, most importantly, the facility appears to be connected to the ancient dragons. This is one of the first major revelations of the quest. For years, players have associated advanced technology with Conria, but Pioneers reminds us that Conria was not the only civilization capable of incredible achievements. Long before modern nations existed, Dragon civilization was already creating technology sophisticated enough to challenge our understanding of the world. The ruins are filled with strange machinery, floating rocks, energy systems, ancient computational devices, and a facility capable of calculating celestial orbits. That detail becomes extremely important later, because this base was never designed to monitor Teyvat. It was designed to monitor the moon. As we continue exploring, we eventually discover an inactive power system. The facility has been dormant for who knows how long. Yet, before we can activate it ourselves, we finally catch up with Columbina, or at least, we think we do. What follows is one of the strangest moments in the entire quest. Columbina appears unable to communicate. She doesn't speak, she barely reacts, Instead, she grants the traveler a mysterious new power connected to Archaeolun energy. Then, she silently points towards the generator. At first glance, this scene feels bizarre, but it stabilizes an important pattern that repeats throughout the moon-gazing storyline. Communication is failing. Messages are incomplete. Memories are fragmented. Everyone seems to know only part of the truth. And Columbina may understand far more than she's willing, or perhaps able to explain. Using the powers she granted us, we restore energy to the facility. Ancient pathways awaken. Machines begin functioning once more. And for the first time in countless years, the ruins comes back to life. Eventually, we reach the central terminal, a system known as Celestial Orbit, and this is where the quest begins, revealing its true purpose. The machine asks us to select celestial coordinates. Several options appear, but only one succeeds: the Frost Moon. The moment the terminal locates the Frost Moon, it begins transmitting engineering schematics and route maps. Suddenly, everything starts making sense. This facility wasn't merely observing the moon, it was preparing to travel there. The blueprints reveal lunar landing preparations, launch routes, and infrastructure specifically designed for moon travel. For the first time in Genshin Impact history, the game directly confirms something extraordinary. The ancient civilization that built this facility possessed the ability to reach the moon, not metaphorically, not spiritually, but physically. And that changes everything. Because throughout Genshin history, the moon has always existed as something distant, a source of myths, legends, theories, the Moon Sisters, the Lunar Palace, the ancient sky. But now we discover that reaching the moon was once an achievable goal. The moon was not merely worshipped, it was explored. As the facility continues activating, another mystery emerges. The Columbina we've been following suddenly transforms, not into an harbinger, not into a celestial being, but into a black Kuhenki, immediately revealing a shocking truth. The figure we followed wasn't Columbina at all. It was something impersonating her, or perhaps something connected to her. This revelation creates one of the most intriguing questions of the entire quest. Why does this creature resemble Columbina? And why is it leading us toward the moon? The game deliberately avoids answering these questions. Instead, it pushes us deeper into the ruins. As we pursue the mysterious creature, the facility begins identifying us as intruders. Security systems activate, ancient defenses awaken, and we eventually arrive at the main control hall. There, another revelation awaits. The entire facility appears to be a lunar launch center. The gravity simulation systems are perhaps the clearest evidence. The facility can artificially recreate lunar gravity, meaning its creators were not merely theorizing about moon travel, they were actively preparing people to survive it. Everything here points towards a single purpose: launching expedition beyond Teyvat. Then comes the self-destruct sequence. The base begins collapsing, alarms echo through the halls, and amidst the chaos, the mysterious black Kuhenki finally starts communicating. only a few words, but those words change the direction of the entire story. Moon, rescue, spaceship, Columbina. For the first time, we realize this creature isn't trying to deceive us, it's trying to help. Not because Columbina is trapped, but because Columbina once saved it. The creature desperately wants to return to the moon, and it believes we can help. Following its guidance, we escape the collapsing facility and board an ancient lunar spacecraft, a vessel built by Dragon Civilization, a machine that should not exist, and yet somehow still function after countless years. During the journey, the mysterious Kuhenki finally reveals fragments of the truth. Its name is Eggie, or at least that's the name Paimon gives it. It explains that Columbina rescued on the moon, that it later recovered in Silvermoon Hall, and that despite losing much of its memory, one desire remains: to return home, to return to the moon. This revelation is enormous, because it confirms that life exists, or at least existed on the moon. Not only that, someone from the moon has already traveled to Teyvat, and Columbina has already been there. By the time the ship enters lunar orbit, the scope of the story has transformed completely. What began as a simple search for Columbina has become humanity's first modern journey beyond Teyvat. The traveler isn't chasing an harbinger anymore. They're following the trail of an ancient civilization, a forgotten space program, and a mysterious that may reshape everything we know about the world above our heads. As the spacecraft approaches the Frost Moon, disaster strikes. The vessel malfunctions, emergency systems activate, escape pods deploy, and the traveler is separated from Paimon and Eggie during the descent. But despite the crash, they've done the impossible. They've reached the moon. And standing upon the surface of the Frost Moon, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. The moon was never just a legend, it was a destination. And somewhere beyond the horizon, Columbina is waiting. And for the first time in their history, they knew they weren't alone. Somewhere beyond Teyvat, another civilization existed and they had reached out. But learning they weren't alone would only create a new question. If someone had sent the message, who exactly were they? To answer that question, the Moongazers turned their eyes towards the stars. They studied the signal, they studied the visitor that carried, and in doing so, they uncovered a terrifying truth about the universe beyond Teyvat. When Columbina vanished into the depths of the moon, most players expected another mystery surrounding the Fatui Harbinger. After all, this is Columbina we're talking about, one of the most enigmatic figures in all of Genshin Impact. But what the traveler discovers during Visitors from the Stars turns out to be something far bigger than Columbina herself, because hidden beneath the moon lies the story of a forgotten civilization, a doomed scientific expedition, and a researcher whose search for answers lead him beyond the stars. The story begins with a trail. Using information recovered from the Eye of Ibn Balum, the traveler learns that Columbina may have traveled deeper into a facility known as Ungi's Circle. As the group approaches the structure, they immediately notice something unusual. A gigantic creature is flying in the distance, an enormous life form unlike anything they have seen before. At the same time, an impossibly tall structure rises from the center of a crater, stretching so high that it seems to pierce the heavens themselves. Yet, despite being known as the realm of life, Ungi's circle appears strangely empty, at least from the outside. Eggie insists that appearances can be deceiving, and soon the traveler discovers exactly what she means. Upon entering the facility, an entirely different world reveals itself. A hidden ecosystem stretches across the landscape. Crimson grass covers the ground, ancient trees towers overhead, strange creatures roam freely, and what looked abandoned from the outside is actually overflowing with life. Suddenly, Ungi's circle begins to make sense. This was never just another ruin. It was a sanctuary, a place built to preserve and study life itself. But something has gone wrong. The facility is falling apart. Ancient systems have begun to fail. Moonlight vines have spread through many areas, and much of the information stored within the terminals has been corrupted. Still, fragments remain. One terminal reveals that a young girl accompanied by a giant flying creature recently passed through the area, a description that matches Columbina perfectly, and the chase continues. As they travel deeper into the facility, the traveler begins uncovering traces of a long-forgotten history. The name that appears again and again is Ungi, a dragon researcher, a scientist fascinated by life, but not merely the life that existed on the moon. Ungi was obsessed with something much more ambitious, life beyond the stars. According to surviving records, he believed mysterious signals were arriving from deep space. Many assumed these signals came from the Dragon King, and Ungi disagreed. He believed the source was something entirely unknown, something that existed far beyond the world the dragons understood. Determined to uncover the truth, he devoted his life to finding the source of those signals. The deeper the traveler goes, the larger the scale of Ungi's research becomes. Massive facilities, advanced technology, entire ecosystems, all built in pursuit of a single mystery. And eventually, that mystery led to something called Project Moongazer. Before the traveler can learn more, however, the search for Columbina finally comes to an end. Deep within the space lifeform capture station, the Harbinger is waiting. But instead of uncovering some grand fatui scheme, the traveler finds Columbina helping someone, Eggie, or rather, Ninin? For the first time, Columbina explains that Ninin is fundamentally different from other Kohenki. She possesses abilities they don't, behaviors they don't share, and most importantly, a mission, a purpose that she desperately wishes to fulfill, despite not fully understanding herself. The revelation raises more questions than answers, because if Ninin is different from the other Kohenkis, where did she come from? And why does she seem connected to the ancient facilities scattered across the moon? Columbina soon introduces another mystery. Two enormous lunar life forms, Maggie and Ungi, once peaceful companions, now seemingly locked in conflict. According to Columbina, something has caused Ungi to become increasingly unstable. His behavior has changed. His emotions have become erratic, and the resulting disturbance has triggered an Archeloon storm powerful enough to threaten the entire region. Determined to stop the disaster, the group follows Columbina towards the storm source. But before they can reach it, Ungi suddenly appears. Without warning, he attacks. A beam of energy strikes Maggie. The enormous creature crashes down, and what once seemed like a disagreement between companions suddenly becomes a genuine crisis. As the traveler attempts to understand what is happening, Ninin begins sensing something strange. Information, memories, fragments hidden within Ungi himself. The closer she gets to him, the stronger those signals become. Eventually, she realizes something extraordinary. The answer she has been searching for may be hidden inside Ungi, and despite the danger, she chooses to continue. What follows is one of the most emotional moments in the entire Lunar storyline. While Columbina and Maggie work to calm Ungi, Ninin risks herself to access the memories buried within him, and suddenly the truth begins to emerge. Long ago, Ungi finally succeeded in locating the source of the mysterious signal. He constructed a spacecraft known as the Moongazer. Then he departed alone into the sea of stars. His mission became known as Project Moongazer. No one knew what he would find. No one knew if he would ever return. For years, there was only silence. Then one day, the Moongazer came back. But something had changed. When researchers entered the spacecraft, they didn't find Ungi waiting inside. Instead, they discovered a strange creature, dark, spiked, completely unfamiliar. At first, everyone assumed the worst. They believed Ungi had been killed, yet the instruments told a different story. The creature carried Ungi's own biological signature. It was him, or at least what remained of him. The recovered records reveal something even more shocking. Ungi was not attacked. He chose this fate himself. Somewhere in deep space, he encountered an unknown life form, and for reasons still unknown, he willingly fused with it. The consequences were devastating. His body began to fail. As he slowly approached death, his partner Maggie's desperately searched for a way to save him. Using experimental lunar technology, she transformed his body into pure moon energy. The result was a new life form, Ungi. The giant creature the traveler has been chasing throughout the quest, his body survived, but the man known as Ungi was gone. Yet, the revelations don't end there. As more memories surface, another forgotten figure emerges, a researcher named Luzalim, and with him, one of the most ambitious projects in lunar history, the Lunar Veil, a system capable of hiding entire regions from view. The traveler has already witnessed its effects. Ungi's circle appeared empty from the outside, despite containing an entire ecosystem within. That was the Lunar Veil at work, and according to the records, Luzalim's ultimate goal was even greater. He intended to conceal the entire moon, but before the project could be completed, disaster struck. An entity from beyond the stars pierced the veil. The laboratory was destroyed, the project collapsed, and the dream of hiding the moon died with it. When Columbina hears this story, she immediately noticed something familiar. A being from beyond the stars. A power capable of altering the fate of an entire civilization. A force that sounds disturbingly similar to the Descenders, perhaps even connected to the ruler of the firmament itself. And suddenly, the mystery surrounding the moon becomes far larger than anyone expected. By the time Visitors from the Stars comes to an end, the traveler has found Columbina. The Archaon storm has been stopped, and Ninin has finally uncovered part of the truth she was searching for. Yet the biggest questions remain unanswered. What was the signal that called Ungi into the stars? What was the life form he chose to merge with? What message did he bring back? And why does Ninin seem connected to all of it? Because beneath the moon's surface lies the remains of a story that is still unfinished. A story about the stars, about forgotten civilizations, and about a journey that may ultimately reveal some of the deepest secrets in all of Genshin Impact. And I have a feeling Project Moongazer is only just the beginning. The message had changed everything. It proved they weren't alone, but it also revealed something else. A darkness moving through the cosmos, a force capable of erasing entire civilizations, and so the Moongazers faced a choice: remain silent or answer. They choose to answer, but sending a message across the universe wasn't enough. It would need to survive centuries, generations, entire civilizations, even the end of the world itself. And so they began work on something unprecedented: Project Moongazer. After uncovering the secrets of the ancient moon civilizations, the Traveler, Paimon, Columbina, and Eggie set out towards the final destination of their journey, a place hidden on the dark side of the moon, a place that shouldn't even exist. As they crossed the lunar sea, the atmosphere began to change. The peaceful ruins and abandoned research facilities they had explored before gave way to something far more unsettling. An enormous structure emerged from the darkness, a colossal military installation buried deep within the moon itself. Searchlights still swept across corridors. Security systems remained active. Machines continued carrying out orders thousands of years after their creators had vanished. This wasn't a ruin, it was a base, a functioning one. And for Columbina, the sight awakened an unfamiliar feeling, a strange sense of familiarity, one that only grew stronger the deeper they ventured. Inside, the group discovered terminals that still contained fragments of ancient records, and those records revealed a shocking truth. The facility had been built in the name of a mysterious figure known only as the Lord of Darkness, who returned from the Sea of Stars. According to the data, the lowest levels of the base reached all the way into the moon's core. An enormous fissure had been carved directly into it. Ancient lunar energy continuously flowed upward through the structure, powering every system, every machine, every defense mechanism, and all of it existed for a single purpose: to transform the moon itself into a weapon capable of firing directly at Teyvat. The implications were staggering. The Dragon Lord Nibelung had returned from beyond the stars, and somewhere along the way, he had reshaped an entire moon into a cosmic artillery platform. But before the group could process what they had learned, something even stranger happened. Columbina vanished, without a word, without a trace. The one person guiding them through the moon suddenly disappeared, and the only clue left behind was the feeling she had mentioned earlier, that growing sense of familiarity. Believing the answers lay deeper within the facility, the Traveler and Eggie continued onwards. Eventually, they reached the laboratory of Luzalim, one of the most important figures in lunar history, and it was there that the true nature of Project Moongazer finally began to emerge. Among the records left behind by Luzalim was a personal message, a farewell, a confession, and a final testament. He spoke of the people who had guided him throughout his life: Imnu Balum, Ungi, Megis, Ninin, the pioneers who had devoted everything to understanding the stars. He entrusted Project Moongazer to the next generation, not because he expected to survive, but because he believed someone else could finish the journey he couldn't. Then came a line that changed everything. Luzalim hoped that after his death, he would journey into the sea of stars, that he would gather stars beneath the curtain of night, and leave behind a message. The dragons were here. It was poetic. It was also a clue, because another record revealed what Project Moongazer truly was. Long ago, an entity from beyond the world sent a message across the cosmos. The moon civilization received it, studied, and learned something extraordinary. They weren't alone. There were other civilizations among the stars, other voices, other lives, other worlds. But those same records also carried a warning. A darkness was spreading through the universe, a pitch-black annihilation, a force capable of consuming civilizations, and distinguishing entire worlds. Knowing that the darkness was advancing, the ancient researchers created Project Moongazer. Its purpose was simple and beautiful: to answer, to send a message back into the stars, to tell whoever might still be listening that someone had heard them, that someone understood, that they weren't alone. But hidden at the end of the record was something even more surprising: a note addressed to Ninin, a note written by Luzalim himself. And in that moment, Eggie's entire existence was called in question, because Ninin wasn't simply an ancient researcher. Ninin was Eggie, or at least the person Eggie had inherited from. The records revealed that Eggie was Luzalim's daughter, yet she had no memory of him, no memory of her past, no memory of her origin. And soon, the truth behind the mystery would be revealed. The search eventually led the traveler into the depths of the moon itself, into the lunar core, a place overflowing with ancient moon energy, a place where gravity twisted unpredictably, a place where reality itself seemed unstable, and there Columbina finally reappeared. She explained that she had been pulled into the moon's core after accidentally coming into contact with its energy. But during her absence, she had learned the truth, not only about Project Moongazer, but about Eggie, about Ninin, about everything. And according to Columbina, Eggie's mission didn't lie within the moon's core. Instead, it would be completely back at the eye of Ibnubulum, the place where the project first began, the place where everything started. But before that could happen, the Traveler followed Columbina deeper into the lunar weapon itself, descending into the launch silos created by Nibelon, the place where the moon had once been prepared to fire upon Teyvat. The scale was almost impossible to comprehend. Gigantic launch tubes stretched endlessly through the moon. Ancient machines still maintained systems that should have died long ago, and at the center of it all stood the final defense mechanism guarding the moon's core. After overcoming the ancient weapon systems, the Traveler finally reached the heart of the moon, the source of its power, the origin of lunar life. And there, waiting among an ocean of ancient moon energy, was the final answer. Project Moongazer was never about preserving knowledge. It was never about creating weapons. It was never about achieving immortality. Project Moongazer was about inheritance. The inheritance of hope, of memory, of a mission. At the center of Lunar Core existed an imprint left behind by Ninin herself, a recording. One final message. Ninin explained that the Moon Sisters had allowed humanity to borrow a fragment of creation itself. Using the moon's primordial power, researchers gathered the knowledge, memories, and data of countless generations. Then they activated a process unlike anything else in Genshin Impact. A new life form was born, a Kuhenki, a being created from lunar data. That being was Eggie. She wasn't merely descended from Ninin, she was her successor, the next inheritor of Project Moongazer, the next Moongazer, and her purpose was now clear. She was meant to complete the final step, to resend humanity's message into the stars. Not a cry for help, not a warning, but a greeting. A declaration that life still endured. A declaration that hope still survived. A declaration that even in a universe consumed by darkness, there remained people willing to reach out and say, "Hello friend." The recording ended. But Columbina revealed there was one final layer to the project. Every researcher who had participated in Project Moongazer had merged their data into the vast ocean within the moon. Over time, they would be reborn, walk the same path again, learn the same truth again, and eventually become the key required to activate the project once more. The cycle would continue endlessly, generation after generation, a chain of dreamers carrying the same message across eternity. Yet there was a problem. The same danger that threatened the stars still existed. Sending another signal might attract unwanted attention, perhaps even the darkness itself. The Traveler was forced to consider a difficult choice. Should Project Moongazer finally end, or should it continue? Ultimately, the decision was made. The message would be sent, But this time, Columbina would help protect it. Using her authority as a moon goddess, she would cloak the signal in lunar power, shielding it as it crossed the false sky, hiding its origin, giving it the best chance of reaching another civilization safely. And so Eggie stepped forth, at last understanding why she had been born, at last understanding why her predecessors had sacrificed everything, at last understanding her place in the chain. Then she spoke, not as Eggie, not as Ninin, but as a Moongazer. She told the stars that they were not alone. She told them that their courage mattered, and told them that their voices had become a light shining in the darkness. And then, for the first time in thousands of years, Teyvat answered the universe. The message vanished into the stars. The mission was complete. Eggie fulfilled her purpose, and as her strength faded, the project finally activated. But then something impossible happened. A terminal nearby suddenly came to life. Static filled the air. A signal, a response. Someone had heard them. The voice that emerged spoke of traveling alone through the universe, of hearing the Moongazers' message, of being inspired by their courage, of searching for a lost home world. And then came the revelation. Two familiar names, Aether and Lumine. The response wasn't from a random civilization. It was from the Traveler's own people. Somewhere beyond Teyvat, somewhere beyond the false sky. Someone had received the message, and someone had answered. For years, Genshin Impact has hinted that the universe beyond Teyvat is vast, that other worlds exist, that civilizations rise and fall beneath distant stars. But Project Moongazer was the first time we truly saw those worlds reach back, not through war, not through conquest, but through communication. A simple message crossing an ocean of stars, a message carried by hope, a message preserved by generations who refused to let silence win. And perhaps that's the real meaning of Project Moongazer. Not defeating darkness, not uncovering secrets, not even reaching the stars. It's beliefs that no matter how vast the universe becomes, no matter how lonely the journey feels, someone, somewhere, is listening. And one day, they might answer. Until then, the Moongazer's voice continued their journey across the sea of stars, searching for another light in the darkness, waiting for the day when they can finally meet again beneath the starry skies. The story of the Moongazers began with curiosity, a group of dreamers who dared to ask what existed beyond the sky. It continued through sacrifice, through generations who've dedicated their lives to a mission they would never see completed, and it ended with a simple message, a voice crossing the sea of stars, saying, "You are not alone." But perhaps the most important part of the story isn't the message that was sent, it's the message that came back, because somewhere beyond Teyvat, someone answered. And if the universe is truly filled with other civilizations, if the darkness between the stars is real, if Project Moongazer succeeded, then one question remains. What else might be listening? And when the skies of Teyvat finally open, will the next voice we hear be a friend or something far more dangerous?